Welcome to Reality Dread, the home of true horror stories.
If you've ever worked with kids, you know that feeling. That moment at 2 a.m. when something wakes you up and you just know something is wrong. Your gut tells you before your brain does. I felt that feeling for the first time in 6 years of camp counseling on a Tuesday night in July, when I counted 12 beds and only saw 11 sleeping kids. And when I looked out the window, I saw the 12th one walking into the forest, alone. Or at least, I thought he was alone. My name is Derek Callahan. I'm 31 years old, and I work as a high school PE teacher in Asheville, North Carolina. But every summer from the age of 19, I spent my July and August at Camp Ridgeline, a summer camp for kids aged 10 to 14, sitting right in the heart of the Appalachian Mountains. I loved that place like a second home. 40 acres of pine forest, a swimming lake on the east side, an old mess hall that smelled like pancakes and wood smoke, and 12 wooden cabins arranged in a horseshoe around the main fire pit. Every summer, the same routine. Every summer, the same magic. The summer this happened, I had 12 boys in cabin 7. Good kids, loud, messy, constantly stealing each other's snacks. Ryan was the class clown, never shut up from breakfast to lights out. Tommy was the athlete, first one up every morning for a run. Jake was the reader, always had a book, even at the campfire. And then there was Marcus. Marcus Hale arrived 3 days late. His mom dropped him off on a Wednesday afternoon, a quiet woman who barely made eye contact. She signed the forms, kissed Marcus on the top of his head, and drove away without looking back. Marcus stood there in the parking lot with a single duffel bag and watched her car disappear around the bend. He was 12 years old, dark hair, thin, a little too pale for someone who was supposedly excited about summer camp. He didn't say much. When I showed him to his bunk, he just nodded, put his bag under the bed, and sat down. The other boys tried to include him. Ryan cracked jokes. Tommy challenged him to an arm wrestle. Marcus smiled politely, but his eyes never really joined in. I'd seen shy kids before. I figured he just needed time to open up. I was wrong about that. The first week with Marcus was uneventful. He ate his meals, participated in activities, went to bed when lights out was called. Nothing unusual. But I started noticing small things. He never slept facing the wall like most kids do. He always slept on his back, arms straight at his sides, facing the ceiling. Every single night. He never talked about home. The other kids complained about missing their phones, their dogs, their moms cooking. Marcus never mentioned anything. It was like the world outside camp simply didn't exist for him. And then there were the mornings. 3 times in the first week, I found dirt on Marcus's shoes. Not the regular mud you get from the lake or the sports field. Dark, almost black dirt. The kind that comes from deep in the forest where the sun doesn't reach. When I asked him about it, he just looked at me and said, "I was just walking around." I let it go. Kids wander. I told him to stay in bounds and moved on. That was my first mistake. The second week, Ryan came to me looking genuinely spooked. This was a kid who laughed at everything, who told ghost stories at the campfire just to make the younger ones cry. Seeing him nervous made my stomach drop. He told me, "Derek, I woke up last night and Marcus wasn't in his bed. I thought he was in the bathroom, so I waited. But 20 minutes later, he still wasn't back. I went to check and the bathroom was empty. I looked out the window. I saw him." He was standing at the edge of the woods, just standing there, not moving, staring into the trees. Then he walked in. I asked Ryan what time it was. He said it was 2:15 in the morning. That night, I didn't sleep. I set an alarm for 1:45 a.m., 15 minutes before Ryan said he'd seen Marcus leave. I sat on the edge of my bunk in the dark and I counted breaths. 12 kids. 12 breathing shapes in the dark. I watched Marcus's bunk specifically. He was lying there, still, arms at his sides, eyes closed. 1:55 a.m. Still there. 2:05 a.m. Still there. And then at exactly 2:11 a.m., Marcus sat up. Not like a person waking from a dream. No stretching, no yawning, no confusion. He just went from horizontal to sitting upright in one smooth motion, like a machine powering on. His eyes opened. He stood up. He didn't look left or right. He walked straight to the door, opened it without a sound, and stepped outside. I grabbed my flashlight and followed him. He was already 20 feet ahead of me on the path toward the tree line. I called his name in a loud whisper. "Marcus!" He didn't react. I called again. Nothing. He reached the edge of the forest and walked in without hesitating, like he'd done it 100 times. Because, I would later understand, he had. He was already 20 feet ahead of me on the path toward the tree line. I called his name in a loud whisper. "Marcus!" He didn't react. I called again. Nothing. He reached the edge of the forest and walked in without hesitating, like he'd done it 100 times. Because, I would later understand, he had. The forest at 2 a.m. is a completely different world. Every sound is amplified. Every shadow moves. I kept my flashlight on Marcus's back, about 25 feet ahead of me, and I followed. He moved like he could see perfectly in the dark. No hesitation, no stumbling over roots, just steady, even steps deeper into the trees. After about 10 minutes, I realized two things. One, I had no idea where we were. I knew those woods. I'd hiked every trail in a 3-mile radius of that camp. But nothing around me looked familiar. The trees were thicker, older. The ground was that dark black soil I'd seen on Marcus's shoes. Two, it had gone completely silent. No crickets, no wind, no owls. The kind of silence that doesn't exist in nature. The kind that means something made everything else go quiet. Marcus stopped. He was standing in a small clearing, maybe 30 feet across, and he just stood there, in the center of it, completely still. I stepped into the clearing after him. I put my hand on his shoulder and said his name. He turned around slowly. His eyes were open, wide open, pupils fully dilated, just black. He was looking at me, but not seeing me, completely blank. Sleepwalking, but not like any sleepwalking I'd ever heard of. And then I heard it, behind me, to my left, a branch, one clean snap. I turned around. At the edge of the clearing, between two trees, there was a figure. And I want to be very precise about this, because I've replayed it in my mind every single day for the last 4 years. It was tall, significantly taller than any person I've ever seen. It was standing completely still with its arms at its sides, and it was watching us. I couldn't make out a face. I couldn't make out clothing, just a shape. A tall, dark, completely still shape standing at the edge of the trees. It didn't move. I grabbed Marcus by the arm and I ran. I got Marcus back to the cabin. He didn't resist. Just let me lead him. I put him in his bed. He lay down, closed his eyes, and within 30 seconds his breathing was slow and even, like nothing happened. I sat on the floor with my back against the door until 6 a.m. Every sound outside made my heart stop. I didn't sleep. I just sat there and waited for daylight. In the morning, Marcus came to breakfast like normal, ate his eggs, talked a little with Ryan. When I asked him privately if he remembered anything from the night before, he looked at me with genuine confusion and said, "What do you mean? I slept great." I called the camp director that morning, told him Marcus was sleepwalking and needed to be monitored. The director said he'd speak to Marcus's mother. He came back to me an hour later with a strange look on his face. He said, "Derek, I spoke to Mrs. Hale. She said Marcus has never sleepwalked in his life." But then she said something else.
She asked me, which direction was he walking? Was it north? I didn't know how to answer that. I didn't know which direction we'd gone. She said, if it was north, you need to move him out of that cabin. And then she hung up. We moved Marcus to the infirmary that night. I watched his window from my cabin until 3 a.m. He didn't leave. On the last day of camp, his mother came to pick him up. I tried to ask her what she meant on the phone. She looked at me for a long moment and then said, "Some places call to certain people. Not everyone can hear it. Marcus can. You just need to make sure he doesn't answer." She took him to the car and drove away. Camp Ridgeline closed the following year. The owners said it was a funding issue. Maybe it was. But I drive past that road sometimes, the one that leads up to where the camp used to be. And every single time, I tell myself not to turn in. So far, I haven't. So far.